Alright, just want to do this video real quick to let y'all know what's been going on with me. I don't have the sign-in information for my other YouTube channel, so I don't know how you're finding this, or because they are linked. I mean, you can find it that way, but I just want to let you guys know I just got done spending 4.5 months in Wise County Jail. That's the same jail that Adam Kokesh was in. That's the same jail that he claims he was wrongfully incarcerated or under a political motivation. Not long before I was incarcerated in that jail, or placed in that jail for the first time, I was incarcerated the day that I was invited by G59 Records to talk to them about making I think it's probably about making music. I don't know what it's about, but I'll find out when I talk to them. But reasonably, you could conclude that maybe that might be what it's about. I've made some remixes for them and whatnot. I think they're pretty good. Their producer, Scrim, or whatever he's calling himself, he's one of these guys who, if you have talent, he'll notice it probably before anybody, and that's kind of what I've noticed with a lot of his music, is that he'll, I find some music by him that's got like 20 listens on YouTube, and, I find it on Apple Music, and I'm like, man, this is pretty good, and then I'll find out that he's messing with him, and so he may see what I can kind of see in some of my music is that it's actually pretty good. Or at least it seems like it. I'm going back through and listening to some of it, and you've got to get away from it for a while. So that's one blessing that's come out of it, is I've had a chance to get away from it for a while, long enough to listen to it again and be like, well, that wasn't that good, but that actually was pretty good. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is that I was pulled over in Decatur, Texas, Wise County, I think it was the 11th of March, 2018, in the slow lane, going quote-unquote 15 miles exactly over the speed limit. The very exact night that I got that email, the date that I was given that email from Scrim or whatever, Adam Kokesh as well was the exact date that he announced his bid for presidency, and he said that his plates were perfectly valid. There was actually no reasonable excuse for why he was pulled over, and then when he got there, he said he wasn't even told why he was there for a week or something. Anyways, my radar detector didn't go off. I did not get any indication of the fact that I was being radared by these people. I don't believe that I was radared by these people. I was in a car that had GPS on it, and my phone was in a Faraday cage, so I don't believe that they could have picked up a signal on that, but I was taking videos and stuff on my way back from Dallas, so they could have figured out basically where I was at and when I was going to be there. And in my emails, I was telling them, I'm up here in Colorado and I'm on my way back. And they caught me with a gram of hash, and then as well I did chew up a joint trying to dispose of the evidence. And so anyways, I made a video about Slipknot track 74217000003, which isn't even music, it's just somebody over and over going, the whole thing I think is sick, the whole thing I think is sick, the whole thing I think is sick. And on my other channel, I go into the whole thing, which is that, basically I was targeted at an early age in a Nazi funneling operation, and from what I can tell by the nature of the music and how it corresponds to a lot of the programs and shit that they've implemented through the Acacia strain and everything else, this Coma Witch woman, which I've never gone into, but really it was this woman, Lena Headey, from Game of Thrones, and I used to watch her, and I was like, man, she's hot, and really a lot of it was about just the fact that, she's an attractive woman, but I think I was impressed as much with the screenwriting and the show itself, and I was usually pretty intoxicated, and not trying to say that she's not an attractive woman or anything, but I think a lot of it just had to do with this. I was really impressed with her acting abilities and all that. So, anyways, I went to her YouTube, her Twitter feed, and there's this thing. I love the, I love Misfits. I worship the brave, and then I tweeted her something about gun control, and all her tweets turned on to a sexual nature and all these images, and she's all like smiling with this super sincere smile and all this little heart and all this. And then when I started talking about it, then she pulled her Instagram feed for a while. And really, what it was about was just this program where they kind of subtly, you know, imply that she's attracted to me and then put me in this state where basically I'm just feeling like this woman really likes me, and then I'm like in this love-stricken coma, and instantly a lot of this did end up happening, where instead she leaves me chained to a bed, and I actually was like stuck dead fast for a while, like thinking about this person, like, and didn't even eat for like 2 weeks or like a week, and then whenever I realized all this was going on, I didn't even sleep for, man, days on end without the influence of any drugs or anything. And so anyways, it was a really crazy scene. But what really got the FBI's attention, in my opinion, is when I showed that what the FBI did is they went, when I showed that track as my social security number. And so essentially it's just a subtle reworking of my social security number. And I was only 15 at the time when this came out. And so what the FBI did is they went to Wise County and had them pull my bond. First of all, they called up my dad's office and started demanding my location. And they did. They gave him my location. I'm not sure if they threatened them to the point of doing it, but there was threats made to me. I haven't talked about this yet, but I put on my headphones, and there was people that came over they didn't come over fully over the headphones like full volume, but at low volume, and there was several people. One of the strangest experiences I've ever had. This dude came over, sounded like a military person. It was like four of them. The first person came over, he goes, "Tanner, this is I'm with the U.S. government. I want to give you an award for I want to give you a badge for freshness," or something like that. And then another person came over and goes, "Tanner, I'm with the IRS, and I want to let you know there's been a series of there's been a series of unverified or something false credit reports made on you." And then another woman came over and goes, "Tanner, now there is a woman in this," making threats to about this woman who I was involved with, which they've done over and over again through the Acacia strain. They talk about how she got strung out on pills while I was locked up for a year. She got strung out on pills when I got out. And they're talking, that's what they mean by she shouldn't be walking in her condition. And so I ended up calling up Alex Jones, and I was like, I did a lot of meditation and stuff, and I felt like I was being directed by God. But it was a lot of nervous rambling because there was people that had actually died. I came across this report for $3.5 trillion that was shipped to Europe, and it went missing, and I documented it, uploaded it. But I didn't have you couldn't actually tell, because I ran it through Movie Maker, and it came out pixelated, so you couldn't actually see the headline of Bloomberg at the bottom. So I was walking around with this really damning evidence on me, which I think is probably why they killed these people, as intimidation to me. The guy I was buying my weed from, and then my court-appointed drug counselor, because I had failed drug tests, so for marijuana. So they put me in. So both of these people come up dead within about a week. Shortly after I post this evidence online, and they then fucking make this video. We're the reason there's blood on the ground. We dress the sheep. We're gonna rip you to shreds. Basically saying we're wolves in sheep's clothing. Refusing to sleep around like wolves or whatever. And fucking, I don't know. There's this group called the Fabian Wolves in Sheep's Clothing. It's a communist organization. I believe that's probably what they affiliate with. They got all this shit about Obama and stuff on these little album covers that they do on the side and all this stuff. Anyways, my social security number, I would have never really wanted to give this to everybody, and I don't know how the fuck they got a hold of my social security number. There's a lot of questions to be asked about how I came up on their fucking radar. Period. I mean, I'm now probably not much to look at now, and I usually got a goatee just to cover these scars on my face and all this shit. But when I was a young kid, I was pretty attractive. I mean, I was pretty well. I don't want to say attractive. I don't know if I was attractive or not. It could have been charisma or just the way I dressed, really. But I was pretty well liked among the opposite sex, and to the point where really it was pretty crazy. I mean, God, I mean they would be like hanging out outside the boys' locker room. Just bring them outside. Just bring them outside. And this is like the most attractive girls in school. I never spoke to any of them. I ended up taking the most attractive girl in school to the prom. I never did actually talk to her. It was all arranged through other people and stuff. And then I'd go to the locker room and the guys would be like, yeah, all the girls are standing around. It'd be like people I grew up with. They'd be like, hey, did you see him today? Did you see him today? And they'd be telling me this stuff. I'm like, God. And, I did what I could to dress really well. I was in the junior PGA tour, which isn't really, you just pay $20. It's not really, there's no qualifying rounds or anything in the junior PGA tour. But I shot like 95 when I was 13, counting every single stroke, and I did it all right, I guess. But I think my dad, we got to play golf everywhere. Basically, at every single course in town, we got free access just with this booklet that they gave us to the PGA Tour. So that maybe saved him some money. I don't know what I did to, deserve all those clothing and everything, but probably just my dad wanted me to maybe even pursue a career in professional golf or something, and wanted me to kind of take on that, etiquette type of lifestyle. It's a different mindset. But and so a lot of really nice clothing, preppy clothing and stuff like that. So I did my best to always dress really well and always smell really great, put on cologne, and I just did it up to the nine. And girls were, honestly, I had my braces taken off, and girls were actually pretty interested in me. So I just really just put more on top of that. And so basically what happened, my social security number is 645-16-1549. And so the way that track works is it's 1 plus, because it's dash, is 645-16-1549. So basically the way that works is it's 1 plus 6 equals 7. So the 6s have become 7s, and there's an extra digit on the Slipknot track, which is a 3 at the end. So I looked at the first 5 digits, and just adding the 1 to the 6 made the first 5 all the same digits except for the 2. So I started looking at the 3, and so obviously I went to the digit that wasn't the same, and I just added it, and that made the first 5 digits all the same. So then you look at the last 4, and it's 1 plus 4 equals 5, plus 5 equals 10, and then the 9 is an upside down 6, so then you add 1 to the 9, and that makes it 10 as well. So it's just basically the 0000 is about zeroing out all those digits. So essentially, it wasn't, when I got arrested in Denver, Colorado, there was dozens of cops. I mean, it was an extravaganza of cops, and there was multiple vehicles out there, vans, that was just packed with cops. I mean, there's cops everywhere, and so it was crazy, and they came up, they had a machine gun pointed at my head with a helmet on, and screaming at the top of his lungs for me to get on the ground. And get on the ground, get on the ground. I was like, whoa. And he's complying, They probably wanted an excuse to fucking shoot me. I was quick to put my hands on the back of my head and get on the ground immediately. And it was just crazy, And I've been reading The Art of War, and it talks about, when you're under pursuit to go into hiding and try to evade in order to exhaust the enemy's resources. And, I think finding that book in my possession because they just went through my truck. Was, you know, I don't know why, but Donald Trump started being really nice to North Korea, and he goes, he's a strategy guy, and he like salute. And I was like, and that's why I posted that video to my likes about, I can't even remember what it's called, but it's about this monkey king. This is an ancient Chinese story about this king who's a monkey, and all he wants to do is collect all these weapons. And then he has to go into this mountain, and he gets a gold ring put on his head. And then when he comes out of the mountain, then every time he wants to screw up, then the ring tightens around. It's about an idiotic, illiterate. It's about a leader who's lacking knowledge and how he acts. And you know, it could be easily just an easily enamored person by just the specter of this. I mean, he maybe didn't even know the book existed. It's so pathetic, in my opinion. Just the way that I look at the guy, but you know, it was, you know, I'll be honest. I basically did threaten those people, you know, and I think they probably were alarmed, but I don't think that. I mean, given what I had just stumbled across, you know, they could have easily been like, well, you know, we want to get you in to see a psychiatrist because we know that, or a psychologist or some therapy or something, because we know that this is hard for you to come to grips with, you know, and that would be the compassionate approach, because, you know, it's not every day that you find out that you are being stalked by the whole goddamn world and all these, you know, platinum artists and everything, and that they were all stalking you when you were 13 years old, you know. And you can say what you want. You can believe that it was a good thing that they screwed me and, you know, put me in prison and all this, but I mean, these people have threatened my life many, many times, and I've called the FBI on Vincent Bennett of the Acacia strain, you know, stalking, harassment, threats. I mean, all this stuff he did to me that I didn't even know he even existed, and put it in music. And it went to the top of the Billboard charts for hard rock, and just, and nothing, you know, nothing for him at all, no trouble at all. So why am I getting in all this trouble when faced with all of this? You know, but he doesn't. It just doesn't add up. And you know what does add up is the fact that as soon as I put that timeline together and I put out a video for it, before I was still at that time didn't know what those numbers meant, but I was right after I posted that video, I was still thinking about it. And you know, you would think, how did you even realize this, or how did that cement in your mind so heavily? And I was sitting there, and I was doing just an agonizing amount of meditation. I would sit for hours, and all this stuff was coming down on me, and like Ice Nine Kills and this song by Xavier Wolf called Philosopher's Stone, which essentially is about burning a city down. You have to really read into the lyrics to figure out what it's about, and how I'm going to be somewhere else, and I'm going to come back to Texas. And then this song by Ice Nine Kills, where it's talking about, you know, they turn my eyes to destruction and stuff, and they always do the end of these songs, they don't finish them properly, and then I got to go in and fix it. And I don't know how they ever concluded that I was going to be able to fix these songs without knowing that I had any kind of musical prowess at all, but just maybe just knowing how much time I've spent listening to music, that eventually I'd be able to do it. Because at one point years ago, when the iPhone first came out, I was telling one of my friends that, you know, I feel like I could rebuild the end of a lot of these songs. They don't quite sound right. And I think that they're like geniuses, you know, and they just knew that I was going to be able to do it. And like, if they just want to put out just an incredible album, because they're so fucking jealous of you or whatever the fuck it is, they're just gonna fucking do it, you know? And like the Slipknot album, you know, just bam, all this shit that's gonna happen to me. And you know, so basically what happened, to go through it again, is I was funneled, basically at that time, they put out that album, Follow the Leader, and it went to the top of the TRL charts, and it stayed at the very top for a record number of days at the time. It was a record number. And what it did was, it was about, you know, already got the life, already got the life, already got the life. Because at the time, I was, like I said, I was really, you know, I was like talk of the town or whatever. And I think what it was supposed to do is turn the local population against me, as well as, you know, getting my mother to relent on her paternal instincts to forfeit me over to, you know, essentially strangers to do whatever they were already had in their mind they were going to do. And there was these new teachers that came into the school that we had not ever had at our school before. And they're always, you know, just I mean, I remember being in computer lab and she was like, "Why are you so bad, 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 bad?" And she was a really old woman, and I was like, because an old person is that old. I mean, she's like in her 80s. Will be more forthright and not know where to draw the line. And I think she did know where to draw the line on what just putting down bad behavior reports and actually asserting it. Overly asserting something that wasn't true. I remember looking at her and being like, "What? Like, what are you talking about, lady? I mean, I'm not that bad. I wasn't. I was actually really at that point. I was really shy, which was kind of an obstacle for me because I had all these girls after me. And I was like, God, like, it was just overwhelming for me to have that many girls after me, and I was just like I liked so many of them. It was part of the reason why I did everything I could to look as good as I could, and not being able to really even talk to them just because essentially I was being overwhelmed by them or whatever. I was already shy. I just had it in my. I was a shy kid. I think that's another reason why I did myself up to nines or whatever as much as I could. Just try to attract them without even having to, you know, say anything. And so, anyways, they that worked, and I think they went to my dad. And all this, the way it came to me in meditation was that I knew that they did it. I knew they went to my dad. I knew that, that exactly how this worked. And so, you know, so what I say, I think they went to my dad, and we want him to go to this. There's a military school we have in mind. They sent me down to military school, and then the head of my dorm took me down there with the psychiatrist, and there's two of them sitting across from me, asking leading questions about depression. At that point, like I said, it turned the local population against me. I was pretty isolated, so I did have the depression. It's like this is how propaganda works. It's not magic, and you got all these people sitting in a room trying to figure out how to screw over a 13-year-old kid. I mean, it probably wasn't that hard. It raises a lot of questions. How was I even on their radar? I mean, 9/11 hadn't even happened. They hadn't even announced the surveillance state. But I mean, undoubtedly, all the conversations that were being had over telephones between these girls, getting to the age where they spend all this time on the phone and all the talking and about different things, and they just knew everything about me. And so, anyways, I get down to this school, and they get me on Prozac, and read this book, $1 Trillion Conspiracy by Jim Marrs, New York Times bestseller, and found out that Prozac is 94% fluoride. It was originally introduced in Nazi Germany alongside the fluoridation of the water supply. And I think the chemical name is fluoxetine, and so in the song "Got the Life" it talks about you'll never see soaking depths with me, or something like I was to join his misery, you know what I mean? And so the thing about it is I don't know if that's like sexual sadism, or whatever, but anyways, it screwed me up, and then I ended up, for a little while, I felt good on it. But the first thing I did was I was like, I don't need to worry about all this stuff, I don't need to worry about, because I had lost my retainer. I was like taking pins, like forcing my teeth back, and like keeping my teeth perfectly straight and all this. And I had to have teeth taken out just to get them in position. They'll never be straight like that ever again. And, the push-ups and the clothing, and I was just like, man, this is great. I don't have to worry about any of this stuff, And I was like, I don't want to say this, but I was actually stealing blackhead strips and was like ripping them out every day. So, anyways, point of the story is just like all my concerns went away, man. Healthy concerns, in psychology they call them stressors, because some stressors are good and some stressors are bad, but they keep you motivated to do a certain thing, to keep you motivated for what's best, And there was this kid in there, and he was kind of like gay or something, and they were like trying to screw up my sexuality, and he was like, "Have you ever like stuck stuff up your butt or anything like that?" And I was like, and I got a hold of all this weird pornography and stuff was always winding up in my possession, and it was just, man, there's just a legion of people out there, because the Federal Reserve has, if you ever read Creature from Jekyll Island, there's an army of people being financed just false money. You know what I mean? Just fraud. And there's an army of people out there that are just living on this stuff, and we're like their pets, you know, and they just fucking sit around and watch us. And you don't think they're really out there, and you're like, well, if I just ignore it, then you know it'll never affect me. But man, these people are really doing stuff to us, and like, and you know, people can encounter these people and like go through a little maze and wind up in their little trap and wind up in their little fucked up bullshit, you know. And so I get back, and you know, when I get back, I'm so screwed up in the head that I was like off the walls. Like I was like, I got myself kicked out of school within a couple of weeks, fighting and just skipping class and just not giving a shit. And I was just totally a different kid, and I was very unhappy and very confused. I can't explain to you how confused I was. I can't explain to you how unhappy I was. I was a different kid, totally. For the rest of my life, I would never be the same. You know, and Charles Eliot Perkins writes back from Nazi Germany, the world-renowned chemist, and he said, I want to emphasize to you with all the, you know, I can't remember, all the power at my control, I can't remember the exact words he said, that any person ingesting an infinitesimal amount of fluorine for a period of 1 year or more will never be the same again. And truly, I was never the same. And while I was down there in that military school, they were having hearings in Congress about whether or not kids should be allowed to have Prozac. You know, it was like somewhere in some circle there was like, oh man, this is screwed up. And Congress was almost like going to try to shut this whole thing down that they were all doing. You know, the whole thing, I was thinking, that was probably a conversation that somebody was having on the inside, and they probably recorded that and played it back over and over again on that song or track. And so, anyways, I get back, and I basically have lost my ability for self-affirmation. You know, I'm reading this book. I was reading this book called Happiness by Matthew Ricard, and I'm reading another book called Altruism by Matthew Ricard. I finished that, the book Happiness. It's a really good book. Get a chance to read it. And he says in there that, you know, ego is an unhealthy thing, but a certain amount of self-confidence is a healthy thing, you know, and that a lot of times in psychology they get them mixed up. But I had lost my ability for self-affirmation to the point where I was going to see therapists. I couldn't understand what was going on. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And actually, he had to stand me up in front of the mirror and have me look into the mirror and say, like the Stuart Smalley skit, you know, I'm a good person, people like me. I was laughing, like, why is this going on, you know? And then I went from that to like a different drug. It's like a self-fulfilling process of going from one drug to another, trying to fix yourself once you're totally screwed up on these drugs. And I went up, got on Paxil, and it just got worse. I remember taking these pills in the morning, like, whoa, man, I think this screwed me up, man. Something screwed me up. So basically, it was about, the song Eyeless is basically about, you know, twisting the knife in my psyche of this notion that, you know, there's something wrong with me, that like I'm not the same, but it is in my head, or it's not in my head, or what is it, you know, and just scrambling my head, like. And so then I went to my dad, because like, if you read The Art of War, they say, you know, if you're predictable, if you're scrutable or perceptible, you know, you got to remain imperceptible and inscrutable, because the enemy will read you in order to set a trap for you. And the trap was that I would go to my dad, exactly what they thought I would do, and say, I got to go to another school. I cannot be around all these people. I cannot face these people anymore. And so I go down to this school. It was called Excel Academy. It ended up getting shut down. And they sent me down to the school in South Texas. And these people, they put me on Prozac. I got on Prozac. And I stayed there for like a year and a half. And I would sit with all these people that I was used to sitting with. That they kind of like became my little circle. There's one person who's like overly zealous, outgoing type, and like all these different people. They would put all this whipped butter on their cornbread. It's like a lot of it, and it tasted good. And so they were doing it. I kind of looked up at them and said, "I do it. We'd all eat this stuff." But what I didn't really recognize is around the time that I started doing that, these kids, who a lot of them were compliant to this program where I really wasn't, they were taken and run around trees outside in the sun, and I wasn't. And when they came to give haircuts, they just gave me like the worst haircut. And what it was that I became pale, and then I like had a layer of fat all over my skin, and I just didn't look good at all. I mean, I looked really bad, you know. And they were making me unattractive to appeal to whatever it was. I don't know what it was inside of them that needed that, you know, to like screw me up. You know, 15 years old or 16 years old or whatever it was. Like, I don't know what it was. Like, it wasn't enough to screw up my head. Like, they had to finish the job, make sure that I wasn't unattractive. It was like, it's like, uh, whatever, that movie Snow White or whatever, you know, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all, and it doesn't say you, and you gotta go fuck somebody up, you know? And the world had essentially fallen to that fucking point with all the fucking people in prison, everything else, you know? And the worst part about it was, I didn't even have a political opinion about anything. I could not have told you what the Federal Reserve was or whether or not it was good or bad. If you brought it up to me, it's, in all likelihood, I couldn't have even told you that I even knew it even existed. I didn't have, you know, a spoken opinion about the drug war. I mean, people had told me when I was younger that the drug war was bad, but I remember when, like, the last time I had even thought about the drug war was after somebody said something to me about it. I was 11 years old, you know? It wasn't even cell phones. There was no, in all likelihood, they didn't even know that conversation even occurred. And I never once, like, I never said nothing to anybody about it. I never said, hey man, do you know the drug war is bad? I never said those words, you know? I never. By the time that all this occurred against me and my social security number was on a Slipknot track and everything else, I had never said those words in my life. I didn't know the Federal Reserve was bad. I didn't know that the IRS was a completely illegitimate entity. I didn't know that. I didn't have that opinion, you know? I didn't think that we were, you know, I didn't even know where our troops were or if they were over, you know, if I didn't have an opinion about even any wars, period. You know, I mean, I remember when I was a little kid thinking about war, like, man, that's scary. I hope there's not a huge war when I grow up, because I remember seeing all these documentaries and all these people dead everywhere. My brother's into Metallica, and I remember seeing all these, you know, master puppets covered with all the fucking graves, you know, endless graves and everything on the album cover and everything. And I was always like, oh man, I didn't have an open opinion about it. You know, I wasn't unique. You know, I wasn't like on the internet saying, hey, this is bad. I never said those words. I never told anybody that I didn't believe in the military or I thought the military was bad or that we shouldn't be at war. I didn't have an opinion, you know? And what's so screwed up about it is that all this came against me. I didn't even have a political opinion. I mean, there's people out there making books against the government that weren't coming up against the kind of shit that I was coming up against. And you know, when I was locked up, and you know, it says in this, I was reading this book about the art of war, and it's talking about how when you come underneath the possessiveness and the aggression of a regime, that you can come under cutting self-reflection. But I spent a lot of time there just stewing about this kind of shit, you know, like just the power of jealousy and hatred, you know, and and I don't know, I was bitter, you know, but thinking about, you know, in all likelihood, it was just jealousy that really why I had to be incarcerated for this, you know, with the full might of the government, just because it put me in the middle of all this, and the fact that we have a celebrity-obsessed president who probably, you know, maybe it made him jealous or something, you know, and they had to have the full FBI against me, you know, and no compassion. In fact, when they arrested me and took me back to the police station, there was an FBI agent there waiting, and I said, have you seen these numbers? And she said, that's not real. You're wrong about that. And that's what's so messed up is, you know, I was reading this book, Judge and Jury by James Patterson. It said during the investigative process, aspect of the, you know, I forget what the beginning of the investigation or whatever, that they're permitted to lie to you. I mean, if they wanted to win me into their favor and get me to admit to something or whatever, you know, couldn't they have at least lied to me? Couldn't they have at least said, yeah, Tanner, it looks like you're right about that, or, you know, what? I mean, what was the fucking point of that, you know? And, you know, and I was like, and she was like, and I was like, I'm not a convicted felon either. The only way that they even extradited me back to Texas, and I fought extradition for 2 months, was based on the fact that I was in possession of gun as a convicted felon. I was charged with that. And when I got back to Texas, um, they dropped it. So, you know, I was extradited to Texas by Denver, Colorado, just to enforce Texas law. So Denver essentially and the state of Colorado enforcing Texas law sent me back to Texas. And you know, I was sending out a lot of emails about this, and the Suicide Boys put out a song called Carrollton, which is where this all occurred, where I was at the time. And they put out another song called 122 Days, which if they had called up there and asked around that time, they put it on. They put it out to the day 3 months from the day that I was arrested. And if they had asked, they would have told me, yeah, he'll be to court in a couple of months. They'd probably figure out I'll cop to probation at that point, which I wasn't given a bond. I was held the whole time on no bond. I couldn't even get a bond. So, you know, my dad went with a local attorney thinking that was going to help. And, you know, my attorney I spoke with today, who's really great, is George Milner Jr., and he got some charges dropped for me today and some time served on something else, misdemeanor stuff out of Dallas County. But he said, you know, I would have appealed that to the Court of Appeals to get you a bond. He said it would have probably been egregiously high at that point. But, you know, it's just, I mean, God, you know, it's just obscene, you know, and it's just, one of the things that really went through my head while I was in there was just this is just the ignorance of it, you know? I mean, after all that you've done to me, you know, to come and bring the hammer down on me as soon as I discover it, I mean, just boom, just immediately, you know, no reserve, no, hey, you know what's the smart thing? And then thinking, you know, it's not even about trying to silence me, you know, because he knew that I was going to be out. No, what it was about, and I'm not even thinking this way anymore because I don't have time to spin my wheels on bitterness. I'm trying to disconnect from that. Is, you know, now that I'm out, I was pissed off for 4.5 months. So you can imagine being pissed off for 4.5 months. But, you know, just the fact that really it was about being a minder and being like, oh, wow, oppression, let me, you know, and somebody discovered oppression. Oh, you know what we do? Well, we you know, we bring the hammer on them, you know. Like, there was no, like, well, this is a really screwed up situation where the whole government was turned on a kid, and, you know what, we better, like, not, you know, because that would look bad, you know. And the fact that there was no reserve and just the ignorance, you know what I mean? Like, this woman, like, she just had glazed over eyes. I was just like, you're just an ignorant, incompetent bitch, you know? And she was, like, overweight, and she was younger than me, and it was just, like, just some minder just waiting to just screw up society, you know? And like I said, I don't even think like that anymore. I don't have the time to hate somebody. You know, and I did a lot of reading on Buddhism while I was in there. This book, The Art of Happiness with the Dalai Lama and Howard C. Keller said, you know, he said the 3 poisons of the mind are, well, it's hatred, craving, and ignorance. And not the kind of ignorance that's like you don't have knowledge, but the kind of ignorance that you can be free of suffering, you know. And the Dalai Lama said that in Buddhism they call those the 3 poisons of the mind. You know, and I'm not going to be poisoned mentally and psychologically by you people voluntarily unless I'm just really in an outlandish situation. And you know, they say in Buddhism the 4 noble truths. The first one is that suffering is prevalent and suffering is everywhere. I can't remember exactly what the other one was, but it was that you can be free of suffering. That's another one of the 4 noble truths. But you know, in this book that I'm reading, he said, you know, that's not for situations like prison and war and stuff. That's like day to day, you know, just living life, you know. And I do believe in that stuff. And I'm telling you, man, that book is good. and these books are really good. And so don't think that I'm out here spinning my wheels, being upset about everybody, because truthfully, it's just not a good way to be. It's not a good way to spend your time being, hating people, and it's not useful. It doesn't serve your purposes, and it doesn't serve my purposes to think in terms of myself all the time. And I got out of jail and like my truck was sold. It was my personal truck. I actually owned the truck, and they sold it, and now I'm basically stranded. And because I was going to sell that, I was actually in the process of getting paperwork on that truck to sell that truck, because I had a business going on, and like racist black people kept making false reviews on me on uh, different places, Yelp, and I said, screw it, man. I'm not gonna fight it. They wrote a negative review on me on the Better Business Bureau, something that, and I have satisfaction guarantee. They didn't even bother to call me or nothing, and I told her that on these shallow arches that it's gonna re-crack, and she said that she never heard that, and just whatever. I'm just not gonna mess with it anymore. I said, well, there's this music thing coming up, so I'm gonna try to work on that, crack out a bunch of these remixes coming up to this meeting, and then I ended up missing the meeting because actually all this started coming to me about that time. But also I misread the date of when they were gonna be in Miami, so I was gonna be out there in Miami to meet them, and I have no way to get there, And so I basically let my finances run dry, and I was gonna sell that truck. The truck was probably worth about $10,000. Ended up getting in a wreck, and costing myself about $5,000. I could have sold it to the dealership. They said for about 15. Before that, I screwed up. I got it stuck on something, and anyways, my head was just going all over the place. I was thinking about all this stuff. Like God, my mind was in another place, And but anyways, and that was gonna give me enough money to give me a little I don't know. They like driving these old cars and put rims on them, so I was probably just gonna do that. And then, and then like I said, they stole my wallet, my social security card, my birth certificate. As soon as I put that timeline together, they went in my car and they stole all that stuff. Anything that had my social security number on it or might have my social security in it, they stole it. And then all I had was my passport. And the last time I saw my passport, it was in the hands of this FBI agent. I don't know how she even fucking got it. Well, it should have been in my property. I don't know why she had it in her hand. And she said, "I'm going to give this to the jail." And then when I got out of jail, it was gone. One thing I saw in the news while I was in jail is something about how people living near the border in the United States were unable to get their passports. And I think that a lot of this stuff, and just imagine this bloated, fat, disgusting, ignorant president, celebrity obsessed, that's like, trying to set a precedent after the fact that, that kids can be separated from their children, and, that we have a historical precedent for this. So they've started doing all this stuff in Mexico just immediately after, I got in jail and I had just published all this information. And trying to set this precedent after the fact that I'm not going to get my birth certificate, my, passport and all that, and I'm not going to be able to leave the country, and they want to own me, Like, wow, this guy's interesting. I got to have him, under surveillance all the time. And that's what they did. They called up, need to know where I was all the time. And I went out from underneath surveillance. And I called back my dad. And I said, I need you to wire me some money. Because I had him wire me some money. Instead of just paying for my residence through the company. Because I work for him. And everything. And so I called him up and I said, send me some cash. Because I want to get out from underneath it. And so they did. And then I went under the radar and I came back for cash, and immediately they got me. It was like they needed to own me. You know what I mean? It was like, wow, neat. This is what I became president for, to own somebody. Cool, to watch something, to stare at somebody, to be like I gotta own you. I obsessed with celebrity. Doesn't care, you know what I mean? Just ham-fisted, brazen bullshit. Just crazy shit, man.